Welcome to the Guitar Gym induction session. We're going to use the easy warm-up exercise in this lesson. This is in itself a great little exercise to get your hands moving and to help develop speed and fluency on the guitar. But we're going to use it as a sort of general guide to how to do the exercises in this section of the site in the Guitar Gym. And we're going to be covering things like how best to approach learning the guitar in the quickest and most efficient way, and how to use the metronome. Okay, so here's the tab for this first exercise. Take a few minutes to look at it. You can see it's a pretty sort of systematic set of notes. The important thing with the left hand is one finger per fret. One finger per fret is a really useful general rule to help you use your left hand in the most efficient way possible. What it means quite simply is you assign yourself a position on the fretboard. In this case we're going to start with the first finger lined up with the first fret, and that means that finger stays inside that fret. This finger looks after this fret, this finger looks after this fret, and the pinky looks after this fret. In another position you'd realign 1, 2, 3, 4, but again each finger stays in its own fret. So this is the first and most important principle here. So let's just sort of kick off to show you how this exercise goes. We simply play 4 notes in a row, then the next string, so on. And when we come up to the top string, we move the whole position up a fret and we start working backwards, fingering 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, the important thing with the right hand is to use a consistent picking method. There are several possibilities here. If you're using a pick, try all 3 of these methods. We can use all down strokes, like this. And so on. Or we can use all up strokes. And so on. Or we could alternate down, up, like this. And so on. If you're a beginner, by all means find whichever of those methods suits you the best and the one that you find the easiest, and begin with that. But in the long run it is important to try all 3 methods, and in particular the alternating one. That's probably in the long run the most important one. There's also an argument that says if you can play strict alternating picking, then it's relatively easy to play either all down or all up strokes. So it makes sense to do most of these exercises with the alternating picking method. If you're using fingers, there are several different methods that are worth developing. Remember, we use the letters P, I, M, A for our main sort of picking fingers. Here's a diagram just to remind you of that. Okay, the first method I'm going to recommend is to use the thumb for the bottom 3 strings, and then on the top 3 strings each of the fingers I, M and A, index, middle and annular. And this works like this for this exercise. And so on. Okay, now the second method that's a good one to develop is the thumb and the index alternating throughout. Some people prefer this method. That would look something like this. Now you can hear that has a very sort of two-tone effect, because it's almost always the case that your thumb will give you a heavier sound. I was over exaggerating that a little there to show you the effect. That sort of slap sound that we're getting off the bass notes there, that's sort of characteristic of the sort of heavier motion of the thumb. So that gives you're playing a certain consistency, which you'll either like or not. If you do like it, that's a perfectly approachable way to using your right hand. But it's a fairly sort of specialised way of playing. Now another approach is typical of bass players' approach, really. It's using the kind of walking fingers approach. First and second finger only, index and middle finger only, I should say. Now, because of the kind of physics of it, on your way up across the strings this way, it's worth leading with your middle finger. So you go M, I, middle, index, and that's because it's kind of physically easier to reach across with that finger. It's slightly longer if you look at it, up to the next string. So on the way up you go M, I. So it's always the middle finger that gets across first. Then on the way back we reverse that and go I, M, because it's easier to get across with the first finger to reach that string. So again, when we turn around to come back up, we go M, I. And then we turn around to come back the other way, I, M. And so on. And finally, a slightly more direct approach is simply to use I, M throughout. In one sense that's slightly less efficient, but it's kind of simple, so it's easy. You don't have to stop and think about whether you're coming up or coming down or not. Alright, so on the subject of that sort of how to use your right hand, this is a matter for each individual to work out for themselves to a large degree. I play mainly with a pick, so I tend to develop that side of my playing a lot more than my fingerstyle, but there's a lot to be said for fingerstyle guitar, and I know that a lot of people like the sound of that and like that approach. So the important thing really is whichever you most want to develop to play the guitar with, use that approach on your exercises so it becomes automatic and consistent. Alright, so now we're going to move on and talk generally about how to learn things quickly and efficiently on the guitar. Now this applies to exercises, it applies to songs, riffs, licks, anything at all really, chord sequences. And the secret is this: focus only on one thing at a time. And the things you focus on should come up in this particular order. So, first thing to focus on is playing the exercise right. This means the correct notes, these, not these, in the correct sequence. So those are the correct notes, but they're not in the correct sequence. We need to learn them in the correct sequence. In this case, dead simple, because it's simply fingering 1, 2, 3, 4. The third thing to get right is to make sure you're using the correct fingering, that you're not trying to cheat and favour your stronger fingers, for example, but we were using strictly one finger per fret. Having got that sorted, focus in on your right hand and make sure you're picking consistently according to whichever of the schemes that you've chosen. In my case, I'm going to pick alternating. I'm just checking that I'm not cheating. Sometimes you find yourself going perhaps 1, 2, 3, 4 and then another up, and you've reversed it. Try and spot things like that. Those are little habits that creep in that you want to nip in the bud. Alright, so the next thing is you want to focus in on playing it well. So in this case, you're beginning to listen to the actual sound quality of the notes. Now this, if you saw the very early lessons on our site, the real beginners lessons, this is all about getting your fingers right behind the frets. Nice firm pressure, not too hard, not too soft. Fingers up on their tips, not too flat. That's a poor habit to get in, that's a good habit. Nice rounded fingers, a little bit of wrist movement there to get that little finger on its tip rather than on its flat. These are details that you then want to focus in on. On the right hand, under the subject of playing it well, you're looking to get a nice even sound. Like this, not like this. Try and smooth things out, nice and steady. So only when all these points are in place is it worth worrying about the last two major concerns. When it comes to playing rhythmically and finally playing fast, then it's worth using a metronome. Now you can access a metronome several points on the internet actually. Online metronomes are quite easy to get hold of now, but we provide one for you which you can access from the toolkit to the side of the screen here on the right, and you can do that to use along to any of these exercises or indeed along to any of the lessons. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use this mechanical metronome here. Clockwork one. No batteries to worry about. Okay, so about using the metronome, I'm going to suggest that it's not really worth starting to use the metronome on a given exercise until you've got it up to a comfortable 80 beats per minute at one note per beat. Until such time, you're really better off focusing on the do it right and do it well. And the more accurate and precise you get with your fingering, the easier it'll be to comfortably play at a faster speed. So make sure you work up to that speed, concentrating on those aspects of your playing. But let's say that you've done that with this exercise. You can comfortably play this at 80 beats per minute. This is how to actually use the metronome when you're drilling. Okay, So I set the metronome to the 80 BPM mark. It's just done by moving this little weight on the mechanical metronome, but you'll find that nice and easy on the digital online metronome. You'll just click on 80 BPM. So having got the metronome going, I just start with the very first note of the exercise, and I don't worry about playing anything more than that to begin with, while I just sort of set to the metronome. So I'm getting my picking hand going in time to that, like this. 2, 3, 4. Then once I've sort of got that, I'd let my body sort of take on that rhythm. 2, 3, 4. My foot starts tapping in time with it, and then I play to that internal sense of rhythm. 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and I start my exercise. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Every now and then I just check to make sure the metronome is in time with me. 2, 3, that's good. Especially after making sort of transitions there where we turn round from going up to going down the exercise, just make sure the metronome's still with us. Okay, now the wrong way to use a metronome is to chase it like this. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If your attention is focused on the metronome itself and you're sort of hunting after it all the time, then you'll find yourself not playing with a natural rhythm. You're trying to catch up, or you're trying to slow down, or you're trying to catch up. So that's the trick of using a metronome. Absorb the beat from it into yourself to start with. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and then start. 2. It's a bit of a knack, and like all these things, it may take a while to sort of get used to that. But that's my guide on how to use the metronome. So once you've completed the exercise successfully and you're quite comfortable with it at 80 beats per minute, set the metronome a little higher. Now, traditional metronomes tend to go up in chunks of 4 or 8 beats per minute. So in this case, I'm going to put it up to 88. So I'm going up 8 beats per minute. Somewhere between 8 or 10 beats a minute is perfectly good jump each time. You'll get used to finding your own increment. So once we've set it, we go about the exercise in exactly the same way. First of all, listening to the metronome, getting that first note in time with it. 1, 2, 3. Getting your body moving in time with it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then start. You can hear it slightly quicker. Every now and then just make sure the metronome's keeping up with you. So depending on your level of expertise, your level of experience, you may well find that speed ridiculously easy, in which case no harm at all in jumping up by a much bigger amount. But, and here's the most important thing to say about this really, don't waste time practicing exercises badly. In other words, don't play so fast that you're playing it horribly, because all you're doing then is practicing playing guitar badly, and that will make you a really good bad guitar player. So there's the rule. Always set it as high as you can, as long as you're still playing well. Keep those first 2 points in. Remember, play correct, play well. Now, supposing you've set the metronome a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher. You keep doing that until you reach a speed that is more or less twice what you started with. So we started with 80 beats per minute. I've now got this set up to 160 beats per minute. Now at this speed, you can play with it like that. no problem at all. But what I'm going to suggest is that once you've got up to that speed, go back to where you started, in this case 80 beats per minute, and simply play 2 notes to the beat. And what you're doing by doing this is you're drilling with accentuation. You begin to learn to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's an important part of learning to play with good sort of rhythmic sensibility. So here we are back at 80 beats per minute, and I'll just sort of demo how that goes. Again, the trick is to set it up, take your time when you start the exercise to get the right sort of feel on the very first note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So that's 1 note per beat. Now I'm going to double that and go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down up with the pick. Okay, I lost it there, took my attention off it. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and go. So again, you'd carry on increasing the setting on the metronome by increments until you got up to 3 times the speed, or in this case, this gets a bit complicated, but 1.5 times, because if you're doing 120 beats per minute at 2 notes per beat, that's the same as doing 240 notes per minute. At that point, again, you take it back down to 80 beats per minute and you do 3 notes per beat. This is a little bit harder, but it's a very important rhythmic accentuation, especially for blues players. It helps you play in 12/8 time and 6/8 time and things like that. So that sounds a bit like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and we're going to jump straight to the 3, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... and so on. Now please bear in mind, it may take several months, in some cases years, to get up to these kind of levels of doing these exercises. The important thing, keep the quality in there, don't race ahead. There's no points for going fast if you're not playing well, but the trick is to gradually increase the speed and gradually push yourself. Alright, so we end up with this process of gradual incrementing the beat. We should end up with 4 notes per beat at 80 beats per minute, and that would sound something like this. Again, we start by going 1, 2, 3, 4, then I'm going to double it, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then I'm going to double that, 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a... You may notice one or two little mistakes in there, so that's not a speed I would push any further at that stage. If I was drilling that for myself, I would try and improve that, get the quality back in at that speed before going any faster. Okay, so that about wraps it up for this induction session. I suggest you spend a bit of time familiarising yourself with the exercise we've been working on here at whatever speed is appropriate to your particular level of experience. Now bear in mind also that all the things we've covered in this induction lesson are applicable to most of the exercises that you'll come across in this guitar gym section of the site. Alright, well have fun with that, and I'm off now to the steam room and sauna.